everybody, Luna here, and I cannot tell you how thrilled I am that the Mighty Nein are back. I am a Campaign 2 critter. It's what set off my obsession with Critical Role, so it was just incredible to see them again. We're going to break down all of the events of the reunion. This is part 1. Just keep in mind, if you haven't watched Campaign 2, that there will be big Campaign 2 spoilers in this video, so be warned. All right, let's just get into it. Firstly, even just hearing the Mighty Nein music over the art reel in the sort of 15 minutes before the show actually starts just made me feel so nostalgic already, and like the episode hadn't even started. All of the cast are dressed with little nods to their updated character art, which we'll have a look at as we see each character in this episode. And the set is also dressed in this piratey underwater goodness, pointing towards what this one-shot or two-shot is going to be about, Ukatoa. Now, some people did know this ahead of time because one of these cinemas that was showing the episode actually released a synopsis. I think it was a cinema in Argentina. So what the one-shot has been about has been sort of floating around for a little while. Get it? Floating because it's like Ukatoa in the ocean. And I think this was such a great choice for a two-shot because that really felt like such a big unresolved plot point of Campaign 2 was the business with Ukatoa. So I think it was a very smart choice, and, you know, high seas shenanigans is always fun. We don't get an intro song as normal, but we're going to be treated with that halfway through the episode. So we pick up 6 months after the events of Cognosa and the arrest of Trent Ikithong. That's just how I say his name every time now. And the group has separated somewhat to pursue their lives, to settle down, to sort of enjoy some breathing room after all of those horrible, traumatic events. And we get a little insight into what their lives look like now. We did get that little bit of that insight at the end of Campaign 2 when they were sort of talking about what their future plans were for their characters, but it's so fun to see it played out in, I suppose, like real time. First, we pick up with Veth in Nicodranus, who is with her family, Luke and Jester, and she has started.
It's a camp for talented young adventurers, young arcane practitioners, mages in training, fighters, rogues, and we will receive these talented youngsters and train them into fighters or defenders for their own villages, wherever they might come from. The camp is called the Wild Mount Wildlings. Wild out!
I absolutely adore Veth's little summer camp outfit. I just recently cosplayed Veth, but I think I might have to do another one now. This adventuring camp is so lovely, and Veth has plans to bring in guest lecturers like Caleb, like Dagon, who is the person who guided them through the icy tundras on their way to Aor. Yeza's going to teach some alchemy. Yasha might come in to do some classes. And the summer camp is free, courtesy of a little arrangement that Veth has set up.
You don't have to pay for it because we have a wealthy benefactor named the Gentleman, and he and I have this lovely arrangement wherein he takes his blood money and launders it by having a legitimate charity that he donates it to, and whatever I don't use, I send back to him.
There it is.
And it's clean, you know, it's a clean arrangement. The kids get something, he gets something, everyone gets something from it.
I really love how Veth, despite seemingly having settled down with her family, you know, sort of leaving a lot of her elements of her past behind her, still can't help herself and is still kind of getting involved in something a little bit shady. I had 2 wishes for this reunion, 2 things that I desperately wanted to see, and one of them was that we would get to see Luke.
So just know when it's the appropriate time to sneak and an appropriate time not to. We've been working on this.
Right, and I learn through action.
I'm so happy that Veth and her family are happy. Jester, as well as helping out with the camp, has opened up a shop, Bernardo's Better Self. Unfortunately, the business is not doing very well, but, you know, hopefully there'll be time for it to pick up. He's making all kinds of alchemical concoctions, holistic healing, that kind of thing. And he shares with Veth some of the grapefruit ones that he's been working on. We then move over to Zadash, to the Library of the Cobalt Soul, where we see Beau very busily trying to get off of work so that she can go home to be with Yasha. I love how she still looks kind of cranky in her new artwork. She arrives home, which is a cozy little place with a garden and a little fireplace and a stuffy couch. She has an office space, and there's like a studio space for Yasha. And Yasha is there waiting, preparing their evening meal.
Baby. Come here.
Baby.
I miss you.
Yasha's new art. Whew. The little bob just suits her so much. My favorite moment of this scene was how Ashley improvised this little line about learning cooking from Martina Stewart, and then Matt just ran with it.
Just picking things from my garden, from my own solitary dinner by myself.
Martina, we are going to work on this.
Yasha and Beau giving dating advice to Martina Stewart. That was not on my bingo card for this one shot. Beau talks about how she has been investigating the Cerberus assembly, but how all of them have gone to ground because they were kind of spooked after what happened with Trent, so that there's not really much happening at the moment. There's nothing too exciting, and she's kind of bored. And Yasha is thinking about the plans that she has for teaching at the Wild Out Summer Camp.
You should teach them your, grasshopper frittata.
Yes. Oh my God, because
That's
that one's
classic.
pretty easy too for kids.
Yes.
Classic. I love you.
Go on.
We head out to see who we could see. Okay. We head out to sea to join Fjord, Kingsley, and Jester, who are on the Ball Eater. No, wait, it's not the Ball Eater, it's the 9 Heroes. And they're managing a trade route between the Menagerie Coast and Darktow, which is the haven of pirates. Fjord is looking very dashing in his new art and is putting together a shipping company called Stone's Throw Shipping, a little clever play on Fjord's last name. And we learn that Jester and Fjord have bought a small home in Nicodranas, which is where they stay when they're not on the seas.
So
I really like our place though. It is very little, but we've painted it up. It's every time we come into
a lot
port,
of
we're
color.
fixing it up. It's really nice.
maybe too much color.
And then there's, a little side section where I have my own art studio, which is really fun.
Yes, the studio is the house.
Well,
Yeah.
there's, the couch is on the one side, and then the other side, it's the art studio.
My
is
haven,
the specific.
couch. We don't spend much time there.
I absolutely adore Jester's new art. I really love how she's taken on the pirate theme. I can absolutely see Jester as being the kind of person who will embrace an entire new wardrobe when she has a new passion and then move on to something completely different after that. It's almost like I can hear all of the cosplayers in my mind right now, just rushing through their costume supplies to get this look together. And we get to meet, kind of properly for the first time, Kingsley.
It's a bit of a problem, if you think about it, that your shipping company is always a stone's throw away. That means that it hasn't gotten very far, isn't it?
At the end of Campaign 2, Kingsley was sort of not really sure of himself. We didn't really know who Kingsley was. He didn't know who he was. He didn't know who he was. So this is the first time we're getting a proper sense of who he is. I was speculating with my Twitch chat before this aired about whether or not Kingsley would be a full blood hunter, just as Molly and Lucian were. And it seems like, yes, he has retained some blood hunter skills, but he has taken some levels in Rogue, at least 3 levels based on the abilities that we saw him use later in the episode. So his subclass is Swashbuckler, which is absolutely perfect for a pirate. And we know this because he uses sort of the fancy footwork feature and the rakish audacity, which allows you to get sneak attack even when there's nobody else around. This subclass just makes perfect sense for a pirate character. I myself just played a swashbuckler rogue in a pirate adventure. Naturally, Fjord is the captain of this ship, and they have a navigator, the beloved NPC Orly. I was thrilled to see him again.
Well, but you thinking we be looking to avoid this untoward weather?
Fjord, to work out where they should go to avoid this storm, casts Augury, which is a spell that can kind of give you a feel of whether something is a good idea or a bad idea. He asks if they should go west, which returns a weal and woe reading, which means both good and bad things. I mean, the reality is no matter which direction they went, bad things would have happened, right? Because Matt would have just picked up wherever things were going to happen and put it directly in front of them, because that's what you do when you're in a one-shot. So with that, Jester decides that they should go north. Kingsley chats with one of the other crew members, Nyla Coe, who really wants to get into a fight. And Kingsley feels the same because he wants some more cash and he wants to add some more things to his coat.
I'm feeling a little underdressed. You've got to dress for the job you want, after all.
Is this too much? Tears her sleeves off and throws them on the ground. Is this better?
You're so intimidating.
Good.
Chills.
Of course, we know what job Kingsley is dressing for because we know that Kingsley wants to be a pirate captain at the end of Campaign 2. In fact, in the sort of epilogue, Taliesin described Kingsley as having absconded with one of the boats so that he could be a captain of his own ship. A great theory that I read, I think in my Discord from someone, was that this one-shot or this two-shot is going to end with Kingsley sailing off in one of Fjord's boats. I think that would be really fun. We head over to Rexentrum, to the Solstice Academy, and the whole time that Matt was describing this place, I was not paying any attention at all. I was just going like, please let there be Essek, please let there be Essek, please let there be Essek. Caleb is finishing up a guest lecture at the Academy.
But if I could leave you with one challenge as we break for today, it would be to set aside the what and the how for some time and to consider the why. Now, as each of you leaves the academy and you go on to poke and prod at the edges of reality, ask yourselves what the knowledge and power you've gained here is for. Transmutation is a powerful tool for change. How will you use it to alter the world around you? And to what end? And ask yourself, how will it change you? When I studied at this school myself, that question was never on any exam. Maybe it should have been.
He looks very sharp in his new outfit, kind of very similar vibes to his previous outfit, but a little more, I suppose, put together, a little less travel clothes. Looking very slick. I really love this path for Caleb to come in and teach these young kids after he had such a horrible time at the Solstice Academy. It's really beautiful and sad and I just want Caleb to be happy. There is pressure from both Beau and Astrid to take up a permanent teaching position here at the Solstice Academy, but Caleb has said he is not quite ready for that just yet, although we do know that that is in his future based on the Campaign 2 epilogue. Caleb heads home to a small cottage where he sometimes will tutor and teach other students who were not accepted into the Solstice Academy, and he also mentions that this home is kind of more like a front, just a place where he can put up his 9-sided tower. I was really hoping we would get to see the inside of the tower a little bit more because I'm really curious what kind of changes he would have made given that the Mighty Nine have dispersed somewhat. Maybe we'll get to see it in part 2. Caleb wonders if he's going to get a visit from Essek this week. Anywhere? Anyway, Matt, did you anywhere? Matthew Mercer did not give us an Essek visit this week. Maybe in part 2. I think we're going to see Essek in part 2 because I think Matt knows that the fans would revolt if we did not get at least a little Essek cameo. We head back to the Nine Heroes where a dark cloud is looming on the horizon. Fjord speaks with Orly about what kind of preparations to take as they're ready to meet this storm, and I noticed that Travis was playing Fjord in a very, kind of jokey, silly manner, and I quite enjoyed that. I mean, we certainly did see moments like that from Fjord in Campaign 2, but he was certainly more stoic and serious, I suppose, much more taking that leadership role, and I think perhaps part of it was just, getting out those... they haven't played these characters in a while, so kind of getting out those, silly feelings ready to go into, the serious action of the episode. But I quite enjoyed that interpretation, even though I did see some chatter online about how it felt quite different from the Fjord that we know of Campaign 2. I felt like it was fun. I enjoyed it. But that lightheartedness is very short-lived as the storm becomes more and more wild, the ship starts to buck and crash into the waves, and the crew starts to panic. Fjord, being the captain, gives them a nice, rousing speech.
Maybe put something up while we're doing it.
Yeah, I'll use thaumaturgy.
Yep.
Fireworks.
Ah, yes, rough seas. We've seen this before. We shall see its like again.
Behind him, there's a light-up neon applause.
Man your positions, you know your duties. We'll see this through.
Do you have office hours later?
No.
All right, everybody, get to your work. You're too pretty to die today. Go, go, go!
Well, everyone kind of...
I love how Kingsley interjects as well. He's practicing his captaincy skills. The waves become more and more intense as lightning crashes, and Jester uses control water to try and protect the ship as best as possible from the oncoming waves. Kingsley spots, in the water, a humanoid figure. But a huge humanoid figure, a giant humanoid figure. Fjord, as a safety measure, casts water breathing on all of the crew, which turns out to be the right decision, and a huge wave crashes over the ship. They all have to make dexterity saving throws. They roll under a 10 and slide down the ship and smash into the side, taking bludgeoning damage, but they're all generally fine. But Fjord...
For a brief minute, as you hit it, there's a white-hot flash of pain, and then... you feel almost like yourself is drowning. You try and breathe, and it's water filling your lungs, a terrible, familiar sense. The slipping of the warmth of your body, but you suddenly see darkness in front of you, and you're reaching for kelp, you're reaching for surface, and you're being pulled away into darkness. The shadow takes you, and a voice long unheard quakes in your ear.
I found you.
A yellow eye opens before you, before a bolt of lightning strikes nearby. The rain's hitting you, and you're holding onto the side of the ship.
It's Ukatoa! Humans have always been fascinated by the allure of shiny click-clacks. Join me today as we venture forth to find some of these beautiful specimens from Only Crits. Here we see a beautiful example of the sharp edge variety. Known for dazzling their enemies with their sparkle and shine, these dice can be deadly if stepped upon unexpectedly. Next we see these rare oversized dice. Their large and chunky size is perfect for intimidating foes and making a satisfying thunk sound when they hit the table. And lastly, this set, while unassuming upon first glance, contains a surprise for anyone who dares to look closer. Luckily, you don't need to go out in the wild to get your hands on these dice. All you need to do is head to the link in the description, plus during Black Friday and Cyber Monday this week, you'll save 15% off all orders, dice bundles, and combos, and 75% off all D&D adventures. Simply stunning. Fjord comes to back on the ship and tells Jester what he saw, and the whole time this is happening, Sam is just enjoying some popcorn along with all the other theater goers.
This is not present.
Oh my god, give me some of that popcorn.
Yeah. Go ahead.
A heavy, angry crack sound of breaking, splintering wood, and the entire ship lurches upward for a second from below before slamming back.
God, Sam! Sam!
I'm just having a drink of water.
Did you get to go see it at the theater? I was so jealous that it wasn't airing anywhere in Australia. Yeah, let me know in the comments so I can feel jealous of you. Kingsley orders the ship to turn and readies the cannon as Fjord summons the Star Razor and casts Fly on himself just as two giant hands slam into the ship.
Begins to climb up, looking just over the ridge. You can see long, wet, scraggly white hair, a kind of somewhat teal green-blue skin, pale, pupilless eyes, and a thick, heavy, knotted beard filled with kelp and all sorts of broken materials that just drift through the sea as it comes and glances over, maybe just like a few feet from your head.
Jesus.
What do you do?
Kingsley, fire the cannons!
This is a storm giant, a pretty fearsome foe, even for level 17 characters. Its lightning ability does an average of 54 damage. Ouch. Fjord orders the cannons to fire. It does that lightning strike ability. And the whole time this is happening, I was just thinking, like, how are the Mighty Nine going to get here? More creatures begin to come aboard and they roll for initiative. So we get to see Kingsley in action. This is when we get that confirmation that he is indeed a swashbuckler rogue. It was fun seeing the Bloodhunter abilities and the rogue abilities kind of intertwine as well. Ukatoa's army and this small portion of the Mighty Nine trade blows. The giant deals a huge amount of thunder damage. Jester does a stack of damage with inflict wounds. And she takes even more damage from the scions of Ukatoa, knocking her unconscious. So Fjord flies down to heal her with cure wounds. And then
I look at Jester and I say, forgive me. And I will push up off the deck and reach into the bag of holding and pull out the cloven crystal, the third eye.
The mage that's kind of floating above you drifts down and puts out its hand and goes, "Give it to me." Why, smooth?
I'll see you again.
all of the forces retreat. However, the ship has taken so much damage that it begins to sink. They're trying to work out what to do because Jester can teleport them, but she can't teleport all of the crew. When Kingsley...
We've got to do something. You've never saw this before. I pull out a thing. I pull out a small box. And I say, abandoned ship, gather the crew. And I toss it off and it folds into a small boat.
You have a boat in a box?
I have a boat in a box.
Get my boat in a box.
Well, that's awesome.
They all managed to clamber into the boat in a box, but unfortunately they did lose one crew member. But it wasn't Ollie. Whew, thank God. With Ukutoa's army gone, the storm begins to subside and Jester casts mass cure wounds on the entire crew.
Because I'm a healer.
Good job.
Just before the show goes to a break, we get the Mighty Nein intro. We get the song again. This is the same intro that we had for most of Campaign 2. However, there have been a couple of updates. The first one being the addition of Kingsley, looking very dashing aboard that ship, as well as replacing the red dragon that was at the end of the animation with Ukutoa. It made me feel a little sad seeing Caduceus in the intro. I'm really hoping that maybe in part 2 we'll get a little Caduceus cameo, maybe if Jester sends him a message or something like that.
Should we call Caduceus?
Nah. He was sort of useless most of the time.
I hope he is happily making a cup of tea in the blooming grove while all of this is happening. The crew of the Nine Heroes head to the nearest shore and Jester starts to contact the members of the Mighty Nine to tell them what happened. Mighty Nine, assemble!
Caleb! Our boat sank! Everybody... Well...
Oh no.
Ukutoa is awake or something? Fjord gave away the key. We'll need you. And Asik probably too. We're in... You won't believe what just happened. Our boat sank. Fjord gave away the key. We need your help. Twin.
You have all the boy. You're trying to get fucking coordinates to Veth. You got 3 more words.
No, she's got it.
Oh, hey.
Twin something islands. Look it up. See ya.
Hey.
Twins word.
Jester and Fjord argue somewhat about what to do, and Fjord is feeling down. He's quite despairing, blaming himself for what happened. And you know what? He's kind of right. Travis actually makes like a great kind of meta comment here about how it was probably a bad idea to go back out on the sea with the cloven crystal. They didn't do anything else with Ukutoa. 2 out of 3 temples, the locks were opened, and then they were just like, yeah, that's good enough. You know what? If they hadn't done that, we wouldn't have had this brilliant reunion episode. Meanwhile, Caleb fills in Yasha and Beau about what's happening, teleports to Veth's home to pick her up, and then they head to Zadash to get Beau and Yasha, and then Caleb uses a 9th level teleport spell because he is a 17th level wizard, so now he has 9th level spells available to teleport to the Windward Isles. But since he's only had a sort of cursory glance of the location, there is a chance that they could go wildly off course, so Liam has to roll. Luckily they don't end up too far off, although they do end up landing in the water. Caleb turns into a shark so that they can all swim to the shore. The Mighty Nine assembles and Fjord debriefs everybody about what happened. And this is a good time perhaps for a refresher for us about where things stand with Ukutoa. So as I mentioned, Ukutoa was imprisoned using these 3 keys, these cloven crystals. And during Campaign 2, 2 of those temples were already unlocked. These temples are at the sites of Ukutoa's binding, so they only need to put in the crystal to the last site, the last temple, and then Ukutoa will be unleashed upon the world and will most likely wreak huge amounts of destruction. Fjord had a vision of this 3rd temple, and Matt refreshes us on what that looked like.
It is a very blurred, rapid movement, and you see like 3 lights kind of spread out. And as you rush to past them, you hit jungle. And then through the jungle, you see a ruin. And that's the last of the vision.
They spend a fair amount of time like trying to work out where to go, where it could be, and Matt just ends up like tossing them a bone essentially and telling them where it is, which I was quite grateful for because we could have been there for quite a long time otherwise. And sometimes when it is something like this where it's a one-shot or like a shorter arc that you need to get through, you can't really gatekeep that information behind too many roles, otherwise it's just going to end up in a dead end. If they had gone to like the Cobalt Soul to do research or something and spent a day doing that, then Ukutoa's forces would have definitely got there before them and Ukutoa would have been unleashed and, you know, it would have been a whole thing. I mean, that still might happen. That might happen in part 2, but it's much more exciting for them to be like racing there at the same time. They work out that they can get to this temple on foot from Nicodranus, so Caleb, using the teleportation circle in Yusa's house in Nicodranus, teleports them all back there. It was fun to see Wensforth and Yusa again, or hear from Yusa, albeit very briefly, and they all get like shooed out of the Tide Peak Tower very, very quickly. They send the 9 Heroes crew to the lavish chateau, and Jester and Fjord invite everyone to come and stay at their place, and they take a long rest waking the next afternoon. Oh no, can you hear that rain outside? I don't know if my mic's going to pick that up, but is it Ukatoa? The next day, the party try and decide what to do because they have a few options. They could take some horses and they could travel on horseback, which would take them maybe about 3 days. They could fly with Jester, Caleb, and Fjord turning into giant eagles, and that would maybe take about 2 days. Or Caleb can attempt to teleport there. But the only issue with that is that Caleb has never been there before. He doesn't know what it looks like. So there is a very high chance that the teleportation spell could go wrong, which could send them extremely far off course or do some really serious damage to them. Fjord, however, is very concerned about the enemies having a head start and thinks that it's worth the risk teleporting. To help them make a decision, Jester casts Scry on the mage and discovers that they are indeed traveling on land. They're traveling through a hilly landscape, which means that they are definitely on the way. They decide to meet in the middle and teleport to the Gilded Roadway, which is a place that Caleb has been, and then Jester, Fjord, and Caleb will turn into giant eagles and they can fly towards the jungle to see if they can spot this giant. Luckily, with their keen eagle-eyed vision, which gives you advantage on perception checks, they do spot the giant and they start heading down towards the jungle, trying to find a good place to land. Everybody nails it, doing 3-point landings, except for Caleb, who very ungracefully falls to the floor. The weather begins to turn and the rain begins to fall, a sign of Ukatoa's forces approaching. They begin traveling through the jungle, and as they do so, they come across an abandoned camp, which has been abandoned for a pretty long time, something like 50 years. And with an investigation check of 36, Beau manages to find these scraps of a journal. These scraps speak of the markings of the sun being a deadly invitation, an endless source of venomous serpents, and something about there being a nightmarish curse on the stone itself. I'm wondering if these venomous serpents could be anything like the Yuan-Ti that we saw in one of the other temples in Campaign 2. Continuing through the jungle, they come across a old ruined statue that's sort of all been grown over. It's a statue of the Wild Mother, and it has a green gem encased within it, which Fjord takes after Caleb identifies it as, I think, as a stone of luck, stone of good luck. Caleb wonders if this statue of the Wild Mother is indicative of there being some kind of feud between Ukatoa and the Wild Mother. Now, as far as I'm aware, there isn't any specific lore about the Wild Mother versus Ukatoa. It generally makes sense that they would be on opposing sides, but I couldn't find, anything specific. So if you know of any specific lore out there about this, let me know in the comments. I'd be really interested. After an encounter with a curious monkey and some poisonous fungus, they find these ruins of columns that are sort of occurring in a pattern, leading them towards a location, and they come to a clearing, at the center of which is an old ruined temple. And of course, for dramatic effect, they hear the sounds of the giant approaching. They decide to run for it and to try and get to the temple before the giant does. Veth dashes up to find the entrance and finds like a hole at the top of the temple. The top of the temple has kind of collapsed in, but there's still a hole that you can get down. And so they all start rushing forward just as...
like pushing through arms, pulling itself out from the hole left in this ring like canopy cage around this temple ruin. The storm giant pushing through. And that's where we're going to go ahead and stop this episode and pick up there for part 2.
Oh, so exciting. Okay, predictions for next week. What are we going to see? I am very curious to know whether or not we are actually going to see Ukatoa unleashed and then the party is going to have to fight Ukatoa, or are we just going to see like a big boss fight with Ukatoa's forces as well as any traps or things like that that might be in this temple? Or there's perhaps some like big underwater beastie living underneath the temple. If this is going to be a big sort of like lesser idol level threat or fight, is there a chance that we could be saying goodbye to any of the Mighty Nine? I don't want to contemplate that, but I want to emotionally prepare myself just in case. Something that I would like to see, even though it's quite unlikely, is Avantika making a comeback. So Avantika did get killed in Campaign 2 and was like eaten by killer whales or something. But I don't know. I'd love to see her come back maybe in some kind of like undead spectral form. Hey, if a certain character in Campaign 1 can keep coming back, then surely we can have a little bit of Avantika coming back as well. What are your predictions for part 2? Let me know in the comments, or any things that you're hoping to see, even if they are ludicrously out there. We've got to amuse ourselves somehow while we're waiting for the next part to come out. Speaking of which, if you are looking for something to dive into while we wait, I just launched a Campaign 1 breakdown series. The second episode of that is coming out in just a couple of days on my channel, so keep your eyes peeled for that. Just to end on a slightly sappy note, I was very surprised actually at how emotional I got seeing the Mighty Nein again. As I mentioned, I started Critical Role with Campaign 2 like a lot of people. I watched it mostly during the pandemic, so it was kind of a big like coping mechanism for me, and it really holds a very special place in my heart. So I got like quite weepy as it started, which really surprised me. It really is such a testament to these incredible role players and the stories that they tell, just about how deeply invested we get in them and how emotionally connected we are to these characters. So yeah, I think it's what makes Critical Role really special and really wonderful. Thank you to Only Crits for sponsoring this video. Make sure you check out their Black Friday and Cyber Monday sales this weekend. The link is in the description. And thank you so much to my patrons and YouTube members who are keeping my lights on and helping me make these videos. Welcome to new patrons Michael, Philip, and Dean, and a special thank you to Yasha, Admiral, Mark, Chad, Rob, Gemini, Tony, and Baronby. If you'd like to sign up, the link is in the description. And until next time, bye!
You hear back. One second, yes.
Oh my god.
Amazing.
I heard Twin Isles. Something. I was distracted. Really good. Yeah. Okay. Okay, great. Yeah, we'll see you then. We'll see you then. Okay, come on.
Yes.
Veth is coming too.
Yes.
Well played.